Thank you very much, everyone, for this opportunity to speak to you all today. My colleague here, Dan Kowalik, and I recently returned from a fact-finding mission to the Lugansk People's Republic, hosted, as Dan rightfully pointed out, by the Union of Political Emigrants and Political Prisoners of Ukraine. After months of arduous planning and organizing, we felt this delegation was essential for us to see the situation on the ground for ourselves, including interviewing locals and officials who have been party to this conflict since it started in 2014. That is a critical point. This war did not begin in 2022 with Russia's special military operation. Rather, it began in 2014. And I want to emphasize this point. The people of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics in the Donbass have endured a decade of bombardment, terrorism, and brutality, all of which have been severely underreported or even misreported in the West. We visited mass graves containing hundreds of dead civilians, some of whom remain unidentified to this day. There are a small fraction of the tens of thousands of civilians killed or injured during this siege on the Donbass. We saw shelled civilian infrastructure and other physical instances of war crimes committed by the Ukrainian military. What we discovered provided a completely different understanding that went beyond the myopic narratives proffered by the mainstream media here in the United States and in the West. On our delegation, we were joined by two Georgians, a journalist and an activist. The similarity between Georgia and Ukraine vis-a-vis Western involvement in NATO expansion is striking. Georgians fear that the next front for the United States and NATO will be in the Caucasus, as it was in 2007-2008. First and foremost, the narrative that Russia quote-unquote invaded the Donbass in 2014 is completely false, and we saw that on the ground. It not only strips the local population of their agency, but it further promotes an understanding of a population which is occupied against their will. The reality is that the people of the Donbass were citizens of Ukraine in 2014. Many still are. Some served in the Ukrainian government, in its military, and its police forces. However, the Maidan uprising in 2014 and the removal of President Viktor Yanukovych sent shockwaves throughout the country. The rise of extremist groups, including prominent neo-Nazi militias and forces, as well as the rampant historical revisionism and denial of the Russian language and identity, were critical components of the eventual internal civil strife that quickly morphed into what can aptly be described as a civil war. As Human Rights Ombudsman and former Deputy Foreign Minister of the Lugansk People's Republic, Anna Soroka, put it to me, I was a Ukrainian officer. We were told to love our motherland and to be patriotic. I feel personally betrayed. It was Ukrainian police that provided security in the regions that voted in the referendums for independence. It was Ukrainian police and military personnel who felt that the new government in Kiev was not in the best interests of their people and decided to provide protection and support to their people in the Donbass. They simply changed their uniforms, but they remained Ukrainian. Thus, it was Ukrainians who were struggling with one another over their past, their present, and their future. We witnessed firsthand the crumbling infrastructure, closed factories, unpaved roads, and dilapidated tenements. Here it is critical to note that we heard from people throughout the Lugansk region that from 1991 to 2014, there was very little investment in eastern Ukraine. Eastern Ukraine was left destitute with no program of reconstruction, rehabilitation, investment, and development. On the contrary, the bulk of the money was concentrated in Kiev and western Ukraine. This led to eastern Ukraine being considered by many as a backwards, uneducated, and primitive territory, with homeless, drunk, dirty, and antisocial people, as it was put to me by locals. This division between western and eastern Ukraine has historical legacies that are important to analyze and to understand. The demographic crisis in post-Soviet Ukraine reveals a deeper terminal crisis as millions left in search of better lives. However, since 2022 and the region's incorporation into the Russian Federation, there has been a tremendous amount of investment and improvements in infrastructure in the Donbass. We witnessed the paving of new roads throughout the region, as well as the construction of new apartment buildings, university housing, playgrounds, schools, as well as the rehabilitation of older facilities and factories. As one local resident put it, when Russia intervenes, it leaves roads, libraries, and schools. When NATO invades a country, all it leaves is rubble.